Hello and welcome my friends to another video. Today I'm just going to ramble a bit about my writing. So if it's not really interesting to you, just feel free to zone out and use this as kind of background noise. But if you are interested, I hope you'll find what I say interesting, or maybe it'll help you with your own writing. So I think I've spoken before on this channel about how I'm, an aspiring author, and I'm writing a novel at the moment, and I'm hoping it'll be completed at the end of the year, the first draft anyway, and then I'll revise. Well, I'm not hoping, that's a deadline I set for myself. And I set that at the start of the year. And I think it's in fact the only kind of New Year's resolution I'm going to stick to. My other resolution was to read a book a week, and that's not going as well as I'd hoped. I tend to pick books that are way too long, so I'm reading 500 or 600 pages. As you saw, I was reading the Stormlight Archive, which is very long. So, I'm not too worried about not meeting that one. I'm still reading much more than I was. But anyway, on the writing, I guess this is something I only admitted to myself this year, that I always wanted to be an author. I wrote a lot of stories when I was younger, and I guess I just kind of lost that passion for it. And I was thinking a lot about it recently, and I think with any creative endeavor like that, oftentimes we feel very free and unembarrassed by it when we're younger, and we're not really doing it for anyone else. I wasn't really writing for anyone else. I was just writing because that's what I enjoyed, and I was writing the stories I wanted to read, and I think a lot of people find that with whatever it is they're doing, if it's music or drawing or something like that. I think sometimes as we get older, we kind of become more self-conscious, and we are much more concerned by what other people think, and even what we ourselves think about it. We're judging its merit, when really I think we should do it because we enjoy it. But that's much easier said than done. And this year I really kind of admitted to myself that's what I wanted to do. And I think it's something I had kind of suppressed for a long time. Maybe just because another part of being a writer is it's often seen as kind of a 1 in a million shot. And that's something that Brandon Sanderson has talked about as well. It's not really true. We tend to think as authors as kind of these magical beings that kind of you're born as, or it's destined. And I think if you look at it, the odds of it happening are not as minuscule as you might think. So for example, if you take all the people that actually want to write a book, and then you take all the people that have actually written anything, it's a much smaller number. And then you take all of those people and you think, how many of those people have finished a book? That's a much, much smaller number. And then how many people have revised it and sought out publication? And you'll find that the number gets smaller and smaller. And then it's kind of not as 1 in a million as it once was. So Brandon's advice, and it's something I took to heart, was if you finish the book, you've already put yourself in a kind of select category. And you should, I think, do all you can that's within your power to become successful. So, getting published in large part is not really in your control, and there's a lot of luck involved in it. But you have control over all of the steps up to that. So, finishing the book, revising it, making sure it's like the best it can be, and then seeking publication. Number one, you'll be in a much better spot to publish, and number two, you have, even if you're not published, you have a piece of art that you've created and refined, and that you'll probably be proud of anyway, even if it isn't published. So yeah, that was kind of my thoughts on kind of the chances of becoming an author. And I always kind of pulled back from it, even though I think that's what I always wanted to do, just because it seems so outlandish, and I struggle with self-belief quite a lot. So to want to do something such as being an author, which is kind of, sorry I'm saying kind of a lot, but it's seen as one in a million or outlandish, I always retreated from that, I guess. And now this year I finally just decided to go for it, just to roll the dice or go all the way, as Bukowski says. And I'm actually really enjoying the process. Obviously it's incredibly frustrating, but there is a great sense of progress you make every day. And there's something that Steven Pressfield talked about in a book called The War of Art, which is oftentimes it's difficult just to sit down and do the thing you want to do, which sounds paradoxical, because if you want to do it, why don't you just do it? But there's often a lot of things holding us back. One of mine is the fear of it not being good enough. So it's just easier oftentimes to just not do it, because then you can't fail. And that's obviously hindering. And so what a lot of authors say, and I read Stephen King's book called On Writing, and he also says this is just write every day, set aside time to write, and even if you're just staring at a blank page, you'll probably write something, and it might be terrible, but it doesn't really matter. Every author has days where they just write rubbish that they just want to throw out. But if it's good, you can revise it later, and if it's not good, it doesn't matter. And I think that's the main kind of thing here. It's like, if you don't want anyone to read it, no one has to read it, so it doesn't matter if it's bad. And that's something I have to remind myself every time I sit down to write. Just to write, and even if it's bad, who cares? And you'll have, or I have had, flashes where I sit down to write and it just comes out really easily and it reads really well. And those are the kind of days you persevere for, because they're really enjoyable. It's a bit like golf, if anyone's played golf. Like, sometimes you go around and you just can't hit the ball properly at all, and then sometimes you'll hit a great shot. But you won't get the great shots if you never even try, right? I don't even play golf, I don't know why I thought of that analogy, but there you go. And I think it was George R. R. Martin that talked about this kind of difference in writing styles, but other authors have talked about it, and that's architects and gardeners. So an architect is an author that will meticulously structure and outline the book before they even start writing. Often they don't do a lot of revising because it's already planned beforehand, and they know exactly what they're going to write, and it's all the characters kind of fleshed out before they begin. But I'm what you would call a gardener, or Stephen King calls it a pantser, I think, where I just sit down and write, and the story evolves as I write. And that will mean I'll have to go back and change certain things and, make it so it's, what do they call it in movies? It's not consistency, I can't remember the word. Continuity, that's it. Because your characters and your story will often change as you write, and you need to go back and change things. So gardeners, which I class myself as, do a lot of revising. And Brenda Sanderson again says often the first draft is kind of just a very detailed outline. And I'm talking about Brenda Sanderson a lot with regards to this because obviously I'm reading his works at the moment, but also he teaches a class on writing, on creative writing, and I've watched that lecture series on YouTube, and it's really good and it's free. So if you're interested, definitely search that up. I can't remember what it's called, but just put Brenda Sanderson writing lecture or something on YouTube, it'll come up. I watched the full series, and he has a very well thought out way of detailing the writing process and his thoughts on it. And he makes clear that his way is not the only way to do it. But I really like that lecture series. So another thing I wanted to talk about is in my job, I work outside. I'm a tree surgeon, which means I'm climbing trees and stuff, and I have a lot of time in that job to kind of let my mind wander, because a lot of times you're doing something that's physical, requires a little bit of concentration, but it's kind of repetitive, and sometimes you listen to music, but a lot of times I deliberately don't listen to anything, and I think that's really helped my writing. And I'll explain, because a lot of writers in the past have talked about how kind of walking is a great tool for writing, or even like scientists I think have talked about it. I know Nietzsche talked about it. I can't remember the scientist, but someone talked about it, about how, going on walks, moving the body, that kind of allows your brain time to think. And I think in the modern age, we're so distracted by, our phones and media, and we have shorter attention spans, and I think there's just a lot of distraction in the world today that there wasn't just a few decades ago. And I found when I allowed myself time to think, and this isn't meditation necessarily, though I enjoy that as well. This is just literally just allowing your brain space to think. You're not talking to anyone, you're not listening to something. It makes me much more creative, and you can do this two ways. I think you can either just let your mind wander, and you will end up thinking about things like, what am I going to eat tonight, and what did he mean when he said that, or whatever. I think that's important as well, just to kind of process the emotions of the day. But what you can do is deliberately try to think about something. So for writing in particular, if I don't know where to go next in a certain character arc or something like that, I'll just set myself up to think about that during the day, and magically something will come to me. Might not be a good idea, but it's an idea and I can try it. I can refine it. And I think that's just it's a really useful skill. I think it's something that can be trained. But I think whatever you're doing, especially if it's creative, it can be really useful just to have time to think, especially with the amount of distraction that's in the world today. Talking of distraction, I used to be really heavily into video games. Growing up, I was a massive World of Warcraft player, and I think that actually distracted me from my writing as well, because it's just a lot easier to play video games than to do almost anything else. And I'm not this isn't judgmental to anyone. I've not played a lot of video games. I still play them occasionally, but I try not to play a lot of them because I find it very addictive. That's always been my kind of, not vice, but I don't watch a lot of TV. I don't go out partying a lot. It's just that was the thing I would always default to. I find now that I'm trying to write and read much more, it's always a constant battle against that impulse, because video games are they're very instantly gratifying, they're distracting, and they're fun. There's nothing bad about that. It's just, if you have something you want to do that's difficult, like writing, it does take a bit of willpower to kind of say no to the easier option. And what I've been doing personally to kind of make that easier is to kind of during the week, it sounds a little bit crazy, but I unplug the monitors to my PC and the keyboard and mouse and just put them away. So I've my desk is clear, and it just helps that when I get home after work, I have that bare desk, and it's oh, what am I going to do? And it's actually easier to start writing or reading than it is to kind of get the monitor out and get the keyboard and mouse out and start the computer up and everything. It's really just about habit. There's a great book about that called Atomic Habits, and everyone's heard of it, I think, but it is a good book, and it's just talking about kind of setting yourself up to succeed, because we are creatures of habit and ritual, and if you make the things you want to do easier to do, I know it sounds silly, but it helps a lot. It's about breaking familiar routines that you don't think are serving you, and setting up new ones that you actually want to pursue. And so personally I've been trying to, I fail all the time, but it's about the intention, and it's trying to set aside at least an hour every day just to sit down in silence and write. And some days that's really difficult, and some days I don't do it. But that's the goal, and that's something I've been getting really serious about. I read for about an hour every morning before work. I really enjoy that because it's so quiet in the mornings. I'm definitely kind of a morning person, I never thought I would be, but it's developed over the years. Like, I have to start work at 8, so I get up like 5:30, get coffee and just like read for an hour before breakfast. And I find that really enjoyable because it's, your mind is quite still and everything's quiet. No one's up yet, and you can just sit in silence and kind of get immersed in what you're reading. I don't like writing in the morning just because, I don't know, it takes me a while to wake up, and I feel kind of groggier, too groggy to write. Like, it takes me a while to get into it. So reading is much more enjoyable to me. And reading is something I've kind of learned to love again. Again, that's like writing. I used to read so much when I was younger. The Edge Chronicles, one of my favourite book series. I don't know if anyone remembers that. I can't remember who wrote them. But yeah, there was like this series of books set in a place called The Edge. They were like children's books, but they're really enjoyable. And the book series, that was from Mortal Engines. I really enjoyed that one as well when I was younger. And again, video games just kind of took over that portion of my life. And it's only really in adulthood that I rediscovered my love for reading. And but I've been really consistent with that. I've been enjoying it. Just as an aside, what I'm reading at the moment is called Altered Carbon by... I'm so bad with names. Hold on. It's by Richard Morgan. I'm going to talk about this in another video when I'm doing what I've been reading. So yeah, it's like a naked man on the front, but I mean, it's not completely naked. This is a cyberpunk novel. And I like to alternate between fantasy and sci-fi just to kind of keep it fresh. And there was a Netflix show about that I saw years ago, so I thought I'd read the book, and it's actually a really good book. So I'm going to talk about that when I've finished it. I've got like 50 pages or so left. And the good thing is I kind of forgot what happened in the television show. I only remember glimpses of it. So it's really enjoyable to read that. Let me know if you read that one, but I'll be talking about that in another video, like I said. So I've been reading a lot. Not the one book a week, unfortunately, but a lot more than I used to, which I'm really happy with. One of the books, I think I've mentioned it before, called Cloud Atlas by David Mitchell. I don't have it with me, but that was a really interesting book for me to read as a writer, because it's a book that is divided into 6 viewpoints. But what's interesting is each viewpoint they're kind of disconnected from each other. They're in different time periods, different genres actually, which is really interesting. Like, the first viewpoint is a journal, and there's letters, and there's an interview, there's a detective novel, there's a first person, there's third person, and they all kind of follow a similar theme. And I had been working on multiple different beginnings of novels that were all separate, and after I read that, I kind of had a light bulb moment where I thought, all of these things that I've been writing can actually be part of the same book. And I've been weaving those together now. And I think I'm going to end up with 4 different viewpoints. You know, from different, in different genres. There's a third person, a first person, a journal, and a kind of interrogation. And it's a fantasy book, but I think it's going together quite well. But yeah, so that book, Cloud Atlas, just really opened my eyes to what was possible in literature in a new way. So that's why it's one of my favourite books. I've not seen the film, but I think it's got Tom Hanks in it. I can't remember, but I might watch that at some point. Yeah, I think that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about. I just wanted to kind of talk about my writing journey and, you know, why I was doing it and how I do it. I don't know if it's helpful, but maybe some of you are writers and find this interesting. If not, I hope it was good background noise, you know. Let me know if you'd like to do more of these kind of rambly videos, because I like talking like this about things that are interesting to me. And wish me luck on the writing. And I'll see you again soon. So, hope you have a great day or a great night, or wherever you are. But see you soon.